I think we have an exciting, very relevant topic for like many people out there. And it is on the topic of dating. And we know it is a war zone out there, at least the stories we hear. Like, thankfully, we are out the game.
Good answer.
We out the game. So, for you all out there, we know it's tough times. We have a lot of friends who are just kind of sharing their stories. It can be hard to create connections, hard to meet people, hard to find people that value the same things you value. So I think this topic might hit home for a lot of people today.
Obviously, because we've been out of dating for a while. We're married. We've been together for about, 4.5 years? We've been married for almost 2 years.
And we met in 2021. So we've been
right
out for a while.
Post-COVID. But what just came to my mind was I was having a conversation with my best friend the other week. One of the conversations that we had was really interesting. It was on the topic of exclusivity. How do you establish that point when you're dating somebody, when you're getting to know different people, and maybe you fancy one person over your other matches? How do you go from being from dating to being exclusive to being like boyfriend and girlfriend? That's
like
your
the
committed
progression, right? So you have to start a relationship from somewhere. Most people are probably talking to several people.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you kind of progress? But at the same time, it's like, what does that look like? Are there formal conversations around that? And just the objectives and goals of like each phase. We thought that was an interesting topic. We kind of chatted about it personally, just like on our own. I think everyone can relate. Like when you're first like kind of dating, it all starts kind of you're talking to probably a few people, right? Depending on your approach. Some people I know are like super like, oh, if I'm talking to one person, I'm talking to one person. I think like in this day and age, it's like, especially with like the dating apps and things like that.
Well, all the dating shows on Netflix,
Oh, yeah,
you see people are like, I can't, I can only focus on one person at a time. Like,
yeah, I think like, you got to do what suits you, right? People have busy lives, and trying to talk to different people at one time could be a lot. And, trying to balance that and like being to really get to know somebody, it could be hard to really get to know somebody if you're talking to multiple people. So kind of got to figure out what makes sense for you. But I will say like, it's okay to talk to multiple people and like get to know different people. There's different, understand people's different values and kind of see, hey, is there something here? Do I want to move forward? Like, do we have a good foundation to kind of build something off of? I think that's kind of the real first step is it's okay to acknowledge. And even if you're dating someone, it's almost like taboo to even mention that you're even talking to other people. Obviously, it's one of the things you don't really talk about unless someone brings it up, right? But when I was out there dating, I just assumed it was a given, right? Like I didn't expect this person to just be talking to me. Like, hey, we're getting to know each other.
Yeah.
Like we're just, maybe going on some dates, whatever. But I don't expect them to be like, oh, you can't talk to anyone else. So,
and this is true for whether you're on dating apps or dating people in real life. We actually met on Hinge. We were very fortunate to come across each other's profiles. And, when we, a little bit backstory of how we met on the dating app, we were both ready to look for something serious. So, we both knew what we were looking for. We knew, what kind of qualities and values we were looking for in a partner, with trade-offs, opportunity for compromising, because there's no such thing as a perfect partner. And it was great because, I think people sleep on dating apps, and I think people can get very, people can blame the dating apps or the quality of matches that you end up getting on those apps. But I honestly think it's just kind of depends on what type of energy you bring into it. So if you are very intentional and you are, what's important to you is finding a good partner that matches your lifestyle, that shares similar values, and is compatible with you. You make that your kind of North Star. You do tend to approach the conversations and the initial interaction very differently versus if you're just looking for someone, let's say something casual or something, you don't really know what you're looking for, but you're one of those people, the singles who are go with the flow, see where it goes, I'm not looking for anything, let fate take Jesus take the wheel, or let fate decide what it becomes. And I'm just getting to know people, right? If you don't have as much intention, then absolutely, you can get frustrated from the whole process. But I always like to say it's a bit of a game, and that saying like don't hate the player, hate the game. So that was essentially our experience. We had a really great experience. Not to say that you're gonna find the love of your life on dating apps, but I definitely don't knock it, because I think it's just the way you approach the dating apps that matter. And sure, you might go through a bunch of bad matches, like bad fish out there that aren't compatible to what you're looking for. But if you do have that same heart posture and that same energy towards like finding someone, and you know what you're looking for, you're not gonna just give up or throw in the towel and just say, oh, like the dating apps suck, like it's terrible, it's so bad out there, which is what I keep hearing from all my single friends. But I also look at how they're approaching the apps. And again, I don't know what it's like to date in 2026, but those same principles that we were operating on, I assume just because it's 2026, it's not gonna change drastically, right?
Yeah, let me comment on that piece, right? Because I think what you'll realize is a lot of people don't know what they want. And it's true for dating, and it's true just for life in general, right? Like, it's tough to know like what you want. Like, you can look at someone's career, their job, or like kind of where their life is going, and sometimes you're not clear on what they want. Like, what are they actually moving towards, right? Because it's okay to want something. It's okay to say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And I know some people will make people feel bad because, they feel like their expectations are too high, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's a maturity thing. I think over time, you get to start to understand what's really important to you, what's not. That's what we were talking about around values, right? You have to understand, like, you should know, like, what you value in yourself, right? Like, what gives you value? What makes you feel good? What makes you feel like worthy of love, so to speak? And I think some people will look at accomplishments, things they do, their bank account, their status, what they look like, how they dress. Like, there's so many
6
different
feet
things.
tall.
Yeah,
minimum.
There's a lot of things that you can do. And I think coming into dating, one of the best things I can say is, like, you have to understand your value. You have to understand what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And, I think a big thing that, we believe we share, like, even in our faith, is that we believe that we're loved by God, and we already have inherent value, right? We don't get our value from things that we do or have to kind of chase after these things, but just being who we are is important. And I think that's kind of what we're all looking for. We all look for a relationship that allows us to kind of be our true self, where we don't have to put on that an
security.
Act. Exactly.
Yeah, a safe, loving, nurturing space. We all crave that. We all crave this sense of belonging.
Yeah, and I think, like, that's where it starts, right? So you can be talking to different people, and it's like, you kind of say, oh, this person's cool, this person's nice, right? But you kind of figure out very quickly, like, do you see something long-term with them? And I think it's, do you feel at peace around this person? Do you feel like you can share things, you can talk, and, like, it does seem a little like, what's the word? Like a little, like whimsical, where you're like, oh, how do I feel? But I think it's important. Like, if you're around someone and you don't feel comfortable, you feel like you have to put on an act, or whatever it may be, that kind of helps you just kind of separate, hey, what's here, what's not, or whatever, right? And I think that kind of goes to the next step, where there is that conversation around exclusivity, right? Where it's like, okay, you maybe need to have a conversation around, okay, maybe this person is dating other people, and we're trying to narrow this down and see what we have here. And so that's a big kind of step. And babe, I don't know if you have any thoughts on, like, the exclusivity piece.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Everything comes down to transparency and communication, and I think that goes hand in hand with intentionality with dating. If you're trying to be intentional, it does require you to actually take a step back. It requires 3 things. It requires you to be very open to vulnerability. So being able to open up, share things, share intimate details, share things about your personal life, and approach dating with an open heart. Because I know a lot of us have, previous dating experiences, some not so pleasant, and it's easy for us to kind of carry that towards the dating experience, especially when you're coming back to it from that history. So it does require you to be vulnerable. It does require you to open up and take a leap of faith, I should say. Second thing I will say is transparency. In order for you to really just get a sense of whether this person is for you, not only do you have to be transparent with yourself, like honest, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. You also have to be brutally honest with that other person. And I think this is like the hardest thing with dating is when you're getting to know different people, talking to different people. Obviously, especially for the women's side, we always are gonna have more suitors on like an platform like a dating app. Unless you're on Bumble, which I personally didn't like, but that's a different story. But when you have multiple people that you're talking to, it is kind of easy to kind of get lost in like, oh, you know, the attention and like I don't want to say honeymoon phase, but like like you said, the whimsical part of like, ooh, like this person kind of makes me feel good. Ooh, this person has this, and you know,
some people
the
just
fun,
wanting to be wanted, right?
Like the
desire.
belonging.
You're
Yes.
like, ooh. Okay.
Yes. So much so that we are willing to kind of compromise a little bit of that list of standards that we set for ourselves initially when we set out to date, right? So if you have like a long list, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but I will caution that it is just going to take a little bit longer for you to kind of go through the market of people in that dating pool for you to get as close to that list. And so I bring that up because when you do get lost in the sauce and the fun of dating and you feel wanted, you feel desired by, you know, someone who may not necessarily meet those qualifications or that list, right? It's hard to be fully transparent. It's hard to like say, oh, you know what, maybe I'm not really feeling this, you know, or maybe I'm not comfortable with that thing you shared, or, you know, just transparency is I think it's one of the most important things that you can do when you are trying to date intentionally. And then the third piece is obviously communication, which I think it's not like a separate silo. It just brings everything together. The vulnerability piece, the transparency and honesty, right? You do need to communicate, especially when you're getting to know somebody and you know, like, ooh, okay, I could potentially see my life with this person. And at that point, I think you have to be brutally honest, transparent, and vulnerable enough to share, you know, how you feel towards the other person, and just say, hey, like honestly, I really appreciate this connection. I want to be exclusive to you. I feel like it's one of those things you can't just assume that you're exclusive. You have to like just be open and just say, this is what I'm looking for. I really enjoy this connection. I really enjoy XYZ with our connection. I'm only interested in you know, seeing this connection progress. I'm not interested in seeing other people. Only you have control over what you can communicate, right? And the best that you can do is expect that other person to feel the same way or meet you at some point, you know, and be able to at least communicate if they want to work towards exclusivity, or if they're like, ooh, no, you know, we'll see where it goes, and then you'll have your answer. Because that was the case for us when we first was on that path of getting to know each other. Because we were so like dead set on exactly what we wanted, and we saw potential there, and obviously the conversations, like when I tell you I approached this conversation with this beautiful man, like I took it very seriously. Like I wasn't intentionally trying to like sabotage myself and find something. Like I really, really prayed to the Lord, like, Lord, like please like send me a match that, you know, is a good fit for my lifestyle. And like I knew, you know, have a pretty good understanding of myself and like what I was looking for. And so when we would talk, like I wouldn't try to play the games, and like I feel like I don't want to waste anyone's time. I don't want to waste my time, and I don't want to waste anyone else's time, because dating is hard as it is, right? So, you know, if I approached it with transparency and vulnerability, and I was able to communicate, you know, we were both able to communicate every step of the way, whether we were, how we were feeling with each other. So I never had to question as a woman. I've never had to question how you were feeling towards me. I never had to question like, you know, where we were. Sure, there were like uncertainties, because for me, like I took a break in dating. Like I took 3 years off. Like I stayed single for personal reasons, and it was great. It was just what I needed. So kind of getting back into the rhythm of things, like sure, there's things that I had to kind of navigate, like, okay, maybe do I need to like bring it up, or do I need to mention it? But it was this uncertain thing where I personally just didn't know the difference between being exclusive and being boyfriend and girlfriend. I thought,
no. You jump in steps and everything now.
Okay.
Yeah, you jump into the next step. So no, I think I like what you said around the exclusivity, right? Around the transparency and just, being honest with each other, right? And the vulnerability, that's a big thing. And I think like for me, being a logical person and like, engineer, like how I think is, in the first phase, you're kind of just like doing some research, right? You're trying to learn and kind of understand the field, and you find someone, you're like, okay, this person's interesting, right? And we love to talk about investing, so we love like stocks and crypto and all that jazz. So it's like you want to make an investment, right? Like you can't invest all over the place, right? You want to get focused on like what's going to give me the best return on my investment. And I think that's kind of where the exclusivity piece kind of comes in, is you're trying to find someone that you can pour more resources into. And like you, as a man especially, you have to be protective of your resources. I think, as a man out here, being completely honest, right, we do, and I think it's true for women too, but it's like you have to protect your time, your energy, your money, like finances and stuff like that. And so you can't just be spreading yourself super thin all over the place, right? Running around with all these different people. And you see some guys who do that and like they're just like woman crazed, like obsessed. And it's like you need to say, okay, how do I move from, talking to a few people, understanding when it's time to kind of exit, and when I find someone who I want to like double down on. And I think like it's all about that mindset. It's about being clear about what you want, what you're looking for, right? And also hearing from your friends and family around you, like who potentially could be a good fit for you, who kind of, having people around you that can notice some of these things that you might need that you don't even realize, right?
You need people to kind of share their perspective so that you don't have blind spots. I think that's important. And not that you should care about what other people think and live your life like, make your decisions with dating based on their opinions. But I think it's nice to have a community that you, value, that support you, that love you, that see the best in you, right? And also see you for your weaknesses. And like they're able to kind of chime in a loving, constructive way. Whether this person, could be a good fit or not. I think that's very important because you need full different perspectives. You can't just get your like BFFs, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. Like he's not into you. You need like various perspectives, right? It's to help you make the best informed decision, because especially if you're trying to meet somebody and you want something serious, you want to work towards like getting married and having a family, maybe like starting a business together, right? Like doing life together is a huge decision. So you can't take that lightly. You can't just make that on a, I'm feeling the vibes with this person. Like we have good chemistry. Like I'm feeling you, you feeling.
Those vibes will lead you astray sometimes.
The dating apps, or the dating shows, the dating variety shows that we watch. One of our guilty pleasures is like pretending we're like a relationship expert, or I don't want to say expert, like a therapist, and
like commentary.
Commentary.
Just, like, talking about it, and like like watching the shows and like seeing the stuff that people are actually dealing with, and like discussing it, right?
Yeah, because we see things like I just mentioned. We're from the outside, like looking in, right? So we don't feel the same things that you feel. We don't see the things that you see, right? So to able to have that perspective and like see things that aren't through the rose-colored glasses, so to speak, is very important. But and
I think I'll double click on that one, like around the piece of, I think we were kind of touching on it briefly, around bringing that person around your friends and family, right? That's like a big part of
exclusivity.
Step. And what's funny is in our story, I was reflecting on like our story, and my wife brought to my attention that I don't know if I ever asked you to be my girlfriend, and I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I didn't think about it, but I do remember like we had a really special date, and that's when I like wanted to be exclusive with her. Like to me, when I associate exclusivity, and I guess it was because of where my heart was and my intention. When I thought about exclusivity, I was like, all right, yeah, let's do this thing. And I just assumed, and I don't even know, like, and that was like a weird thing that we were discussing was like, there's the exclusive stage, I guess you can say, and then there's the boyfriend girlfriend stage. But for us, how it worked was, it was like, okay, we did the exclusive, and I thought it was like a package deal where you just got everything just done in one shot. And then I think we were out, and I introduced you as my girlfriend. And you were like, oh, wow.
I'm your girlfriend?
And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't even, like, it didn't
Yeah.
compute in my head.
Yeah.
But I say that because if you think about the progression from like the dating to like the exclusive and then to the like boyfriend girlfriend phase, it almost feels like that boyfriend girlfriend phase is like when you start to kind of claim that person, right? Like it becomes not just about you two and building your relationship, but like, okay, how do I integrate with like
That's my
other
bae.
people? Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So it's like,
You're like
I feel like
proud.
that's the next level
Yeah,
up, right? Is okay, yeah, I'm going to introduce you to my friends. I want to integrate you into my life, into my
Yeah.
friends group. And you could probably even do that when you're exclusive too, right? It's not to say like there's like
Sure.
the stages, but I think that part of like claiming that person, introducing them as like yours and like, hey, I'm happy to be with this person.
It's a big,
that's huge.
yeah, it's a big step of commitment. You are telling this person that they mean something precious to you, and you want to bring them, like you said, you want to bring them and integrate them into a much more personal and intimate part of your life that involves, being around your friends and family or your village, whoever you consider your village, your community, your backbone, your support system.
Yep.
And that's very intimate. I think it's very intimate to be able to introduce somebody to that village that you have, because these people in your village know so many sides of you. They've been with you. They love you in a very different way. So they see so much in you, and they want, ideally you have people in your village that want the best for you, right?
Yep.
So being able to introduce someone to those people in your village is very intimate. So I would say that is a very big step in commitment, which is what I associate with being boyfriend and girlfriend. When you are boyfriend and girlfriend, yes, you are claiming that person as someone that you find precious, someone that you value, someone that you respect, and someone that you have intention of being serious with, being committed to. You're not just going to run when things get hard. You are working towards a serious level of commitment. And the last thing that I'll kind of mention on this note is, I think the point that we're trying to make with exclusivity is that it all depends on what you define as exclusive. That's why I say transparency, vulnerability, and communication is so important, because my husband, what he thought defined as being exclusive, he just, he understood that as something that came with being boyfriend and girlfriend, right? Whereas for me, I have different definition of it. I had different expectations of it. Again, because of my dating history, that I didn't really date that recently. So, and I was just getting back into the rhythm of things. And I just assumed that in order for you to move from dating, like getting to know people, to exclusive, to boyfriend and girlfriend, and then eventually to be engaged, and it requires proactive communication. And unless someone says something, like, I don't want to assume that we're and I think that was a very important thing to call out, is you never want to assume, because assumptions can kind of get you in trouble, and I think assumptions can cause opportunity for miscommunication, and you just, at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is decide if you guys are on the same page with everything, with how you define exclusivity, how you define a commitment, a relationship, how you define, what a good relationship is, what a good relationship looks like, what being boyfriend and girlfriend means to you. I think that is extremely important. I don't think a lot of people take time to defining that for themselves. And, I had to learn that the hard way myself. I had to define what that means, what that looks like for me, what that could look like, right? And obviously being able to compare his definition and understanding of it. All that to say, it was extremely important for us to be able to communicate, and we did talk about it, and it was amazing, because we reached a level of emotional connection where we could tell each other anything and everything. And I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid to put my cards on the line. I was not afraid to take the leap of faith, because I will say, when you're trying to date, you will have the risk of, just like investing, you do risk losing your resources. You do take a leap of faith, and it takes courage. It takes courage for you to step out of your singlehood, and to make that investment on a person, or getting to know multiple people, and you might get heartbroken. You just might get heartbroken. That person might not work out for you. But I think that is the nature of the game. I think you have to approach it with an open heart, and that's why I say it's important for you to kind of check your heart and understand like what you're carrying to the dating game or dating process and journey. Because if it's not coming from a good place, it is going to make you a bit like frustrated with the process. It is going to open room for miscommunication, right? And it's easy to go down that path of like self-sabotage and like, just like not having fun with the process of, dating, right? So, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll share is just like, I guess this is like a PSA to all my fellas out there. If you can be more proactive around like the progression, right? You can avoid the dreaded question of, so what are we?
Yeah.
Right? So what are we technically? What is this? What is this that we're doing here?
Yeah.
Right? So like avoid that, get in front of it, right? And like
Take
I think
initiative.
this idea, this structure is a great way to kind of establish how you can kind of, date with intention. I think that's extremely important. I think everyone's got to be dating with intention out there. You got to protect your peace, right?
Yes.
We all work really hard to kind of build up our lives, and hopefully you're working to kind of put your life in a good place, and you want to be able to share that with someone, right? And I think that's the biggest thing when you go into dating is if you're going into dating, think you're going to find someone to fulfill you and make you whole, whatever the case may be. I would argue that's probably not the best approach, right? It's nice to find someone that you feel like is your other half, of course, right? But at the same time, you need to come into it with like, hey, I have a lot to offer. I want to share this with someone. I've built a beautiful life. Like this is the next progression. This is the next step that I have. And so, I think I encourage you all to just go out there, not be afraid to put yourself out there, have the discussions, be smart, right? And let us know in the comments below. Like we want to keep the conversation going. Do you believe that there's a difference between exclusivity and boyfriend and girlfriend? Like, are there specific like conversations you have to have around that, or is it kind of like understood, or is it given? I don't even know how it is in 2026.
I'm honestly curious.
But y'all let us know. You gotta educate us. But I think that's it for this one. So until the next one, we'll see you guys then.